He runs every morning. He scans what my curated list of AI marketing influencers have posted in the last 24 hours. And then he deposits his findings into a Notion database, which means when it's time to create the content, I've got a ready-made bank of trending topics and talking points. And so I don't have to go and fight the algorithms to find this stuff. It's just delivered to me every day.
In today's video, I connected with Loren Bartley, who is an AI marketing strategist, and we went deep. She shared all of the things about how she's actually created a team of skills through Claude Code that help her to create content. Now, this was phenomenal. She shared with us the exact frameworks and processes that she put together so that she could have quality outputs every single time, and also took us through the sort of skills that she's making so that she can make the exact content that's going to convert for her. So if you're interested in using Claude Code and creating skills to really take your content to the next level, this is the video for you. So I'm super excited to dive into this and see how we can do this in a way that means people aren't going to be just sounding like everybody else or ChatGPT in their content. So where do we start? Let's dive in.
Okay, fantastic. So in terms of creating an authority content workflow for this presentation, I am going to be talking a bit about Claude as well, because it is my tool of choice. But I just want to start by saying that you can do this across any of the tools that you're potentially using. You just have some greater functionality if you're using Claude. And for me, Claude Cowork in particular is the one that I love. And I will go into more details as to why as we move on. But what most people would probably know when it comes to wanting to become the go-to expert in their niche is that they need to be creating authority-led content that they're putting out there so that they can be known in the world for the thing that is important for them to want to be known for from a positioning point of view. But unfortunately, what happens is too many people are using AI without training it to truly represent who they are. And they also don't give it enough context to know, who they are, how they'd like to be positioned, and the details of their expertise beyond the surface level stuff. And without training AI on these types of things, it's basically left to guess and it defaults to generic. And then what happens is you just end up sounding like everyone else, or that ChatGPT wrote it. And a result is that you don't stand out. And if you don't stand out, then you don't come across as the go-to expert in your niche. And instead, you're kind of just adding to the noise. And we know there is a lot of noise out there when it comes to content production. So what we want to be doing is we want to actually be positioning ourselves as the go-to expert in our niche through the content that we're sharing. And the way that we can do that is we can build what I call an AI authority engine. And so an AI authority engine has three parts. This is a framework that I've developed, and you use it basically to turn your expertise into consistent visibility, credibility, and ideally, ultimately revenue using AI. And so in terms of the three components that I'll step you through here, the first one is your authority core knowledge. And I'll give you just a brief overview of each of these at the moment, and then we'll go into them in a bit more detail. But your authority core knowledge is basically your strategic foundation, and it's everything that AI needs to know about you, structured in a way that AI can actually use. And so what we need to do here is think of this as the operating manual for your expertise. So it's what actually helps AI to stop guessing and starts making it sound more like you than everyone else. So this is the most important step in the whole process. And I'll go into more details of what that is in a sec. And then the second is your visual authority framework. And so this is how you show up visually. So a lot of people think that creating authority is just about what you say, but it's also how you look and the professionalism in the content that you're putting out visually. And a clear visual framework means that every piece of content that you create, it actually looks like it came from the same brand. And then the third one is the authority content workflow. And this is the repeatable process for creating and distributing and ultimately amplifying your authority-led content week after week, and ideally on automatic as well using AI tools. And it's what makes it possible to produce the content required to position your expertise faster, easier, better, and at scale. So these three components, they all work together. Your knowledge core trains the AI on your expertise. Your visual authority framework makes your content instantly recognizable. And your authority content workflow turns it into a system that compounds over time. So who doesn't want that, hey? That,
Absolutely. I really love how how just simple and like easy it is that you've explained this. Like it makes a lot of sense to just be like, okay, you have to have that authority there. You have to have like as in your actual core, right? Then you actually have to have a framework for how you have that visually and then you obviously have to have a content workflow. So I absolutely love this. How do
yeah.
we actually go and create this authority knowledge core? Like what needs to go into that?
Yep. So these are the steps on the screen at the moment that go into your authority knowledge core. And it's not going to be the same for everyone, but these are the kind of things that are going to be fairly consistent across most businesses. So what your authority knowledge core is, not getting tongue tied, knowledge core is everything that makes you. So if we're talking from a business perspective, it's not just the business. In a lot of cases, especially for those people who are positioning themselves as the authority, not just the business, it's also about yourself. So you need to get this in place. And one of the reasons that you need to get this in place is because it's going to decrease the amount of time that you have to do editing. It's going to make those outputs sound like more. And it's going to, as we've said before, really allow you to come across as that expert in your niche. And the things that go into it, the first thing, which is kind of one of the most important things, is your positioning statement. And so this is what basically designs what you want to be positioned for as that expert. So everything else flows from this. So, for example, my positioning statement is that I teach service-based businesses how to build profitable marketing systems in partnership with AI. So it's basically one promise that you solve, one promise that you deliver on, and one audience that you serve. And the idea behind that is if we know what this is, it's going to help us shape what our content is that we create moving forward. And a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of skim over that. And it's the super first thing that everything else flows from. And then the second thing is your personal DNA. And this captures who you are behind the business. So your personality, your values, your quirks, how you work, your communication preferences. And this is really what stops AI from producing the robotic content that technically says all the right things, but it doesn't feel like you wrote it. So this is your personality putting into it, the soul of you that you're translating across. And then the next one is your brand DNA. And so this is the more business specific stuff. So it's like a business at a glance. And it should include things like your mission, your values, who your ideal audience is, the offers you have, your strategy, your operations, your brand guidelines, on brand guardrails as well. And this gives AI a full picture of your business context. So it understands not just what you do, but why you do it and how you do it. And a lot of businesses probably have done that component of it. And maybe they've done the next component as well, which is the brand voice guide. But obviously there's more steps to that. And the brand voice guide really takes it one step further in terms of representing the brand in terms of how you like to write. So the tone, the vocabulary, the phrases that you love. You might have some signature phrases that you use, some things you do say, you don't say, how you would start a blog post, how you close an email, like all that type of stuff needs to go in there so that the content goes from that's fine to, hey, that actually sounds like me. And then we've also got our thought leadership themes. So this kind of goes back to that positioning statement a little bit, in as much as this defines what you create content about and as importantly, what you don't. So this keeps your content focused and ensures that you're building authority in a specific niche rather than diluting across loads of relevant topics, which sometimes we can go off on tangents with. And then the next one is your frameworks and content. And this basically captures your IP and expertise and any frameworks, methodologies, the language that you use when you describe them, your unique models, your processes. We package that all up so that it's not just going and picking some random ideas. It's actually referencing your intellectual property and not dishing out generic advice. And this is really important when you're going to go and create like thought leadership blog posts and that kind of thing. And then we have this story bank. And so your story bank is the collection of stories that are uniquely you. So if you've got client wins, maybe it's personal experiences or lessons learned, the moments that shape the perspectives that you're putting across, it's the stories that make your content more memorable, and AI can't and won't make them up on your behalf. So you actually need to feed these in. So that's why that one's really important. And then we've got the best practice examples. And so this is just showing AI what a great output looks like. So real examples of your content that you nailed. So blog posts that you love, and it might be the ones you've written, or maybe if you haven't written them before, but you want to emulate something else, you can do that. Emails that have converted, social posts that got loads of traction, like give them whatever it is that is going to give them and when I say them, I mean Claude or whatever AI tool you're using, a clear picture of what good looks like so it can produce more of the same. And I know this kind of might sound a lot to some people, but the good news is that you don't have to build it from scratch by yourself. And I actually recommend that you build these documents in conjunction with AI tools. So get them to help interview you to pull out this information from you would be a really good start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally have questions. First thing for all the coaches watching this, the positioning statement is very similar to your I help statement. So it's just your I help XYZ do XYZ. So very similar things there. Now, my questions are so many questions. So would you have these all as like 8 separate documents, or would you put them all into the one document? How long should this document be? Like, it's a super cool process.
Yeah, good question. So I actually keep them in separate documents, although there might be some crossover between them. And the reason for that is because sometimes all you need is your brand voice document to go into, let's say you're developing a skill. So if that's all you need, then it's good to have it as a separate document. So I actually have all of these as individual documents, and I have them in a folder that Claude Cowork has access to. So I just call it my knowledge file, and my knowledge folder, and it can draw upon the ones that it requires at any point in time. And the other great reason for doing it that way is that you can actually, when we talk about skills in a moment, you can get the skill to reference that folder to pull out the information that it requires as well. And in terms of length, I say as long as it has to be to get the information across succinctly as possible.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's actually what I tell clients as well. I'm like, videos and things that are teaching need to be just as long as they need to be to get the point across. So I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Just back on, I love that you've got them in like 8 separate documents, because obviously that makes it really easy. It's almost like you're building the foundation of a house, 8 separate bricks, right? So I absolutely love that. Just for anybody who doesn't know, what is the difference between using Claude Cowork and Claude like building in skills? Like, is that all the same thing? Do they use the same things? Are they two separate parts? Because it's obviously Claude Chat. And like, yeah, just for anybody who hasn't necessarily stepped into the co-work space yet, are you just able to give a quick understanding of that too?
Yeah, so I like Claude Cowork because the big difference I find is that it has memory across everything. So that's one of the reasons that I love it, because it other than if we're looking at just chat, is that if we look at chat, it's often isolated into projects and it can't go and take things from other chats in the same way that Cowork can do. But Cowork is more agentic also, in as much as it can then go and integrate with other tools. And yeah, so I'll get into more details of to why that's great in a moment. But yeah, if the one thing I'd like to say to anyone that if you just got to try it, you really won't understand how good it is until you have a go.
Yes, absolutely. It's like that thing. It's like, I'm a little bit afraid of AI, but then as soon as you do it, I'm like, what was I worried about? This is the best thing ever. Like, it just makes
Yeah,
life so much faster. So,
yeah.
absolutely. I love all of this. So, once we've sat down, and maybe it takes us a couple of days just to get all of that really clear and worked through so that the AI understands what we're doing, we've got our 8 buckets or like bricks or whatever we want to call them, but our 8 little knowledge pieces. Once we've got that done, is that where we go to understanding the visual authority framework, or what
Yep,
is
yep.
next?
Definitely, definitely. So I can just jump into that now. So basically, your visual authority the authority you're creating, it isn't just what you say, it's also how you show up. So you want to think about your visual authority framework as when someone lands on, let's say, your Instagram, and then they click through to your website and they see your LinkedIn, and then do they instantly know that it's like it's you from your visuals? So that's what your visual authority framework really needs to kind of bring that all together so that it doesn't look like three completely different businesses. So a clear visual framework means that every piece of content you create, it looks like it came from the same brand, whether you're generating AI images, choosing stock or creating graphics. And hopefully you might have picked up in my presentation so far that there's a definite visual design element throughout this, even down to the photos that I'm using. So every single photo that I've created in this presentation uses AI, except for, well, is created by AI, I should say, with the exception of my profile pic, which is at the beginning and end of this. Even this picture of me here is AI generated. But it all looks visually consistent because I've trained AI to know what is consistent for my brand. So that's what visual authority framework basically does. But in terms of what's involved in it, there's six, I think it's six. There's 6 elements. And what this comprises of is your identity anchor. So this is kind of like a cut down version of your knowledge core. And I usually use the full knowledge core for the visual authority framework to kind of pull the bits out that are important from. So it'll be things like your color palette, your typography, if you know the exact fonts that you use in that, feed that in there, your visual style, your design elements and shapes, and also what to avoid. And that's always good to put guardrails around that as well. And once you've developed this, it's basically going to give you a visual brief that you can give to any AI image creation tool, and then you get consistent on-brand visuals back. So now I won't say that this happens every time, because you're probably well aware that the tools aren't quite there yet. So you may still have to throw away more images than you keep or take them into Canva and tidy them up a bit. But if you have a visual authority framework in place, you'll find yourself wanting to hang on to a lot more of the images that AI does create for you. And the amount of editing that you have to do will also drop significantly. So as I mentioned, that this is all of the images that I've used in here are based on my visual authority framework. My visual authority framework, when in regards to creating images, I ask for photorealistic images. I specify that they should be taken with golden hour lighting. I give them my specific hex codes and color palettes of my blues and oranges. And I ask for subtle inclusions of stars and circles as visual elements, because that reinforces my branding as well. So you'll see on this image, for example, that this star has been placed on the desk. Like, that's actually strategic on my behalf. And so when we have this kind of consistency in our visuals, it's how our visual content it starts to build the same kind of trust and consistency as what it does when we're being consistent in the messages that we're actually saying as well. So it's super, super important.
I love this. So if you're someone who has spent some time on this before AI, so say you built your brand out, I don't know, 3 years ago, and you already have an idea, you've already got social media posts, can you upload those exact images, and then obviously with your hex color files, your fonts, all of that sort of stuff, but upload those sort of images so that it can learn to replicate through stuff you've already done?
Totally. And that's what I would recommend people do as this first starting point. And if they've already got, a lot of people already have brand guidelines and those types of things as well. So put that in there. Find stock photos that you like the look and feel of, and ask it to describe, what it is about the visual style of this photography. So then you can use that as your visual style guideline moving forward.
Absolutely. I love this. Next thing I will say is, though, when we actually have this visual authority framework, could we potentially create a Claude Skills or Claude, whatever you use, and then just be like, okay, please refer back to the visual authority framework and now turn this new information into a PDF, or now turn this new information into a carousel or something like that? Is that how we can use this for pretty much anything?
Yes, definitely. So you can actually you can make your visual authority framework a skill itself. I normally would have it as a knowledge file that the individual skills will call upon. And the reason for doing that, and that's the same reason that we do that for your core knowledge, is because if you embed the visual authority framework into skills themselves, if it does change over time, you're going to have to go and change all those skills. Whereas if it calls upon that information, then you can be more flexible with it moving forward. But either approach is totally fine.
Mm. I love this. This is great. Okay, this is very good. This is because with this now, guys, we've got kind of our framework on who we are. We filled our buckets. Now we've got the AI doing the visuals for it. So this is also amazing. Like we've got that bit sorted. So then I'm guessing we go into the content workflow. So how do we create an authority content workflow that actually works for us?
Yep, definitely. That is the next step. So what we want to do here is, well, the authority content workflow, it's basically an AI enhanced system that turns your knowledge into authority-led content on repeat. So it's, as we said, it's the third layer in that authority engine, and it's where everything starts to come to life. So I've broken this down into 5 phases that we'll go through in more detail in just a sec. And every step in the workflow has a specific AI tool to handle it. And in my case, I like to use Claude Skills in order to do that. And so this image that's on the screen at the moment, that's actually a visual representation of my AI Dream Team members that make up my authority content workflow inside of Claude Cowork. And I currently have over 60 of them. And I know it's not possible to see the full details of all of them here. And that's not important, as the team members are going to vary from business to business. But you just need to know that each one is designed to do one specific job in the workflow. So if we can keep it as discrete as possible and get them working together, that's where you're going to get the real power from this. And the other thing I just want to mention is I don't want anyone to see this and feel left behind or get overwhelmed and go, oh my God, you've got more than 60 of these things. Like, how is that even possible? You can just get started with 1 or 2 specialist skills and then you build from there. And I will let you know, once you've done 5 of these, you'll be out of control because it becomes a little bit addictive. And I'm in the process at the moment where I'm building a new skill nearly every other day because it's so easy. But what's important to know is that they're all built on those same foundations, and that's the authority knowledge core that I talked about before. And the reason that we set up this workflow is so it can become a repeatable process, and you're not starting from scratch every Monday morning going, oh, I've got to create this week. Instead, you're running a system that's going to compound over time. And the more consistent you run it, the stronger your authority signals will become, because that's what we're doing this for. And then when you put this in place, the great thing about it is it's going to free up time for you to do those more human touch points, like engaging with the conversations around your content, closing more sales. That's important. And so what you're doing here, it's also not, I'm not a believer of set up all these agents and just let them do their work. I'm a believer of that you work in partnership with AI. So you work in partnership with AI for your content production workflow, which gives you back the time to focus on those relationship strategies and those types of things. So yeah, that's my team. And as I said before, I like to use Claude to do this. And the reasons that I like Claude and why it's my platform of choice is firstly because it's a much better writer, in my opinion, anyway. It also kind of comes down to how skills work compared to the alternatives. So the alternatives for people who aren't too familiar with skills would be custom GPTs in Gems, or custom GPTs in ChatGPT, or Gems in Gemini, or even very similar to projects as well. But what skills are is they're effectively a set of reusable instructions for repeatable tasks. So in a similar way to how you might have a standard operating procedure, or you might bake a cake using a recipe, like a skill is effectively that recipe that allows you to do those things. And what most people don't realize is that they're super easy to create. And Claude actually has inbuilt skill builders that will help you build really in-depth skills with even the most basic of instructions. And even when you're trying to build skills outside your expertise, it's all possible as long as you can describe what you want the skill to do, the type of expertise you want it to have and the outcome you want it to produce, then you're going to be able to create these in partnership with Claude so easily. So easily, which is so fantastic. But the other thing that's really good about these is that they can work together. So unlike custom GPTs and gems, which are kind of in a silo, they kind of operate in their own isolated chat. Claude skills can run alongside each other in the same conversation. So you can pull these skills in as required, and one skill can hand off to another skill. And so you can end up having multiple skills that contribute to a single output. And you can even build an orchestrator skill that coordinates the full workflow across quite a few specialists, and you don't have to bounce between chats. So before, when I said I like the fact that it's more, it remembers stuff and that kind of thing, this is part of the reason behind that. And this becomes a really big deal when you're running a content workflow, because let's say you're batching your content of a Monday morning, for example, you might have a coordinator skill that walks through the entire process, calling on the different specialists at each stage, and then pulling everything together at the end. And that's what I've got set up. And that's one of the examples that I'll show in just a second. And so that's just not possible with custom GPTs or gems, at least not at the time of recording this, which I always have to say, everything can change in this space so quickly. And skills are also built on an open format, which is called skill.md. And that means that they're not locked to a single platform. So you can use them in, Manus as well. You can use them. I know at the moment that skills are now available in ChatGPT for the business accounts. I'm not sure if they've rolled out to all the accounts yet. And so if you want to move from one platform to the other, you just take that skill.md file and then you just import it to the other tool. So that's another really cool thing about skills. And I believe moving forward, everyone will probably have skills on the platform anyway. So it's worth investing your time in building these, regardless of what platform that you're on. And then I suppose the other thing I just want to mention here is, which goes back to why I love Claude Cowork so much, is the integration side of things. So for me, I connect it with tools like Notion, Google Drive, Gmail, and WordPress, and my social scheduling tool. And that means that when my AI Dream Team members, are doing things or creating content, they're not just doing things, they're not just writing things, they can also publish blog posts, they can sync to databases, and they can create email drafts, they can schedule content. And that's what really makes the difference between an AI chat tool that's working inside your business and like a strategic AI kind of team member that is actually producing really quality outputs that compound over time. So that's kind of, I've probably gone on a bit about my love for Claude there, but I thought that was really important to explain that, because it's, especially from a skill perspective, it's really good to invest in creating these things, because one, they're going to save you so much time and give you better outputs, but also you're going to get better at this the more you do it. And the first skill you create might be a little bit rubbish, but they're going to improve over time. And the results you're going to get from using Claude Cowork is going to be so much greater than you could get out of an individual chat. So that was my long way of saying I love Claude, basically.
Oh, I love Claude too. So thank you. I love this. And for all of those who are at home and they're using Claude more like a chat GBT, where you're just going in there and being like, hey, can you write me a blog post today or whatever? I love
Yeah.
how you've explained all this, Lauren, because you've made it sound really accessible for people who are like, well, I don't really understand what a skill is and I don't understand how to make it all work together. And everybody keeps talking about how ChatGPT and AI are running their businesses and I don't get it. And the way you've just explained this now makes it really clear and easy to understand of how it all works together. So thank
Yeah.
you. I'd love to ask, I have two questions. First question, when it comes to, because I know you said you've got over 60 of them and you said kind of keep them a little bit like doing their own individual thing. Say, for example, I had a YouTube video that I wanted to turn into multiple pieces of content. So I've got one YouTube video, I've already recorded it. Now I want to turn it into a newsletter, a carousel, a B-roll, a Facebook post. Say I want to turn it into 5 bits of content. Would I be using one skill to turn it into a blog post, one for a B-roll, one for a thing, or would I be doing all 5 of those pieces with that same skill?
Yeah. Well, as a starting point, I would probably say just use one. So, for example, and I call all of my skills really weird names. So, I've got Ria Repurposer. She's an early skill that I created, and Ria basically repurposes content into all the different formats. And I use her when I'm a little bit lazy these days, but I've kind of not using her as much as I used to because now I've got like Victor video verbiage, for example, who's really skilled at taking a blog post and creating it into a script for a video. So Ria Repurposer can still do that, but she doesn't do as good a job because she's not trained in the depth that Victor is. So I would say, yes, when you're starting, just do one skill that'll do all the things. And then over time, start refining each of those tasks and make them into their own specialists rather than overloading the one skill with all those things, because the more you put into these skills, the less effective they're actually going to get. It sounds counterintuitive, but it is the case. You want to be really specific because it's got to read through all the knowledge files and all the instructions and everything. Every time it needs to do something, it's going to use more tokens. And it's also going to not, if it's really overloaded, it's not going to read everything like we do, you know. So keep them specific is what I would say.
I love that. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really good to know. And I love that you said just make one that does everything to start with. And then as you get better. So it's like you can kind of be like, all right, I can do this now. All right, now let's see what happens when I just do one that specializes in blog posts. Now let's see what happens when I just do one that specializes in newsletters and compare the two. It's kind of like an experiment. And then you just keep refining the one that's working the best. And like as you said, maybe you're having an off day. So you're just like, all right, I'm not going to do these all separately today, but I do want to get something else, or just do a quick version. I'll just use the first
Yeah.
one. So I love that. Thank you. Are you able to tell us some other things that we can, like, I know you call it your AI dream team. Are you able to tell us what other skills we can create as business owners and content creators?
Yeah. So when I step you through the actual workflow, I'll do that. But I think it's probably best if I actually just give people more information about how to build the skills first. Because
Okay.
when you understand how to build the skills, you'll have a better understanding of what you can potentially create. So, with that in mind, the first thing that I wanted to kind of step you through, it will give people the confidence is that it's way easier than most people think. So you don't need to code, you don't need technical skills. It's just a conversation. You don't even need to know what the output is going to look like because you can have a conversation with Claude and get Claude to build these things for you. So every skill, no matter how simple or sophisticated you're creating, should be created using these 3 steps. So these 6 steps that I've got there. So the first one is a little bit obvious in terms of it's like, just be clear on what the outcome is. So before anything else, you need to know what good looks like. And so if you can't paint the picture clearly, then you can't tell Claude how to get there. In the same way that you couldn't explain to an employee how, what the outcome is, then they're not going to get the right result. And the same thing is in this case. So what you want to do is you want to kind of say, okay, if I had this skill working perfectly, what would I be holding at the end of it? And if you know the answer to that question, then you just basically tell Claude, this is what I want you to produce. So try to be as specific as possible as well. So don't give it a vague outcome like write a blog post about marketing. I want this skill to be able to write blog posts about marketing. That's not going to work. So you need to say something more specific, like I want it to create a 1,500 word thought leadership blog posts written for service-based business owners in my brand voice with a hook, 3 subpoints, backed by real examples and a clear call to action. So that's the kind of explanation you want to give as to what you want the outcome to be. Because the clearer that you are, the more effective the skill will be that you create. So that's the first step. The second one is that you want to define when the skill should be triggered. So this is going to shape the description field in the actual skill file that gets outputted. And that's going to then tell Claude when to fire the skill, because something a lot of people don't realize is that you don't even have to say, hey, Claude, use this skill. You could, if I was to say, hey, Claude, write me a blog post, it knows to use my skill, Boris Blog Builder, because I've said, write me a blog post, and it knows that Boris has the expertise to write the blog post. So you want to think about the language you'd naturally use when you want to run it, and make sure that those phrases are given to Claude as part of the description and when you're trying to get Claude to create this. And that will mean that you can actually go and explicitly ask for a skill. So you can do like a / and then all your skills will come up and you can choose which one you want. But if you do this well and really define when it should be triggered as part of the instructions, then you won't even have to do that, which is fantastic. And the other reason that you want to think when should it be triggered is some of these things you can have so that they automatically go at a certain time. So I have some skills that run every day. So you want to know that as part of when you're creating this as well. The next bit is capture the expertise. And I'm not going to go into this much detail. You notice I've made that, stand out there. I've highlighted that. That's for a reason because I'm going to come back to this. But obviously you need to capture your expertise so that the expertise that's required for this so that it knows what to do. Then we need to go and build the skill. And when we build the skill, this might sound technical, but it's totally not. You don't have to write the skill file yourself. It's effectively a conversation where you tell Claude what you want the skill to do, share whatever expertise or source materials that you have, any examples you've got, and then Claude will ask you some clarifying questions and then just basically say, okay, can you now make this into a skill for me? Create the actual skill.md file is what it will do for you. And so you become the director of building that skill, not the typist. So it is a conversation. So that build bit is super, super easy. And then once you've got it, then basically you want to, and usually in the same chat, when they've created the skill, you might just then go and test it. So ask Claude to run the skill and then give it some real inputs. So you run it with, the ideal scenario that you'd like it to work with, and then give it some more messy inputs, like don't give it all the information or give it an edge case or something like that, and then see where it fails, because so that it can you can then go back and say, okay, we need to put more guardrails around this, or we need to put more detail into this so that it's not going to break under the conditions that it might actually be used, especially if you're going to hand this off to one of your team members to use. You want to maybe get them as part of the testing process as well. And then you'll be able to note kind of what's missing in the outcome, what might be confusing, where it's producing weak outputs, and then give that feedback back to Claude and get it to update the instructions based on that. And then when you're happy with it, at that point, you want to save and deploy it. And this bit, people go, oh, that sounds technical. This is the hack, okay? So when the skill's doing what you want it to do and it's time to make it available for use, just say to Claude, package this up as a skill. And when it packages up as a skill, it's going to give you a button. And then you click on that button to save it directly to your Claude environment. So no fiddling with file paths or anything like that. It's one click, it's installed, it's in the right place. You didn't even have to go and find where it lives. Like, this is what I mean by these are so easy to create. So that's how we build them. But I'm just going to harp back again and say that skills are only as good as the knowledge that you build them on. So don't jump to building skills before you do the core knowledge first, because I know that skills sound a whole lot sexier, but go and do the knowledge first. And that's probably the most important thing there. But I also said that, this one's highlighted and I want to go into more detail with this. And the reason that I want to go into more detail with this is because there's different starting points in terms of capturing your expertise. And it's going to depend upon, where your level of expertise lies as well. So with this one, I kind of find there's often 4 common starting points for this. And some people have the knowledge in their head. So you're the expert, you know all this stuff. And then when this is the case, what you can basically do is just brain dump. So you can brain dump, give it all the information that you have, build it through a chat. So just have a chat and say, I want you to do this, blah, 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 all the things I've said before. And it comes from you. And so you can even talk this out using the voice functionality if you want, or you can, hand it transcripts from information, other things that you've got, other areas of your expertise, put some of your core knowledge in there, blog posts you've written, depending on what it is that you're doing. So that's kind of often the easiest one to do. The next one is if you have source material to work with. So let's say you've already got SOPs or course content or other things, you can feed that in, and your standard operating procedures basically become the spine of the skill. And then you give them, finished examples of what it should look like. And then you just ask Claude to identify the patterns and build the skill itself, which it can do. And then the third one is where you might have the outcome, but not the expertise. And so maybe you've never done the task before, or it's a discipline outside your usual area of expertise. So, for example, you might not be good at creating press releases, let's say, but you need to create one each time you run an event. So here you might start by telling Claude the role you want it to play and the type of expert you want it to be. So, for example, in that case, it'd be a public relation expert with maybe 10 years experience creating press releases for professional speakers who run events. And then that role becomes the lens through which Claude is going to approach the research and structure the skill for you. And then you tell it what you want it to produce, and then what good looks like, and then basically it's going to research the methodology and the processes, and then it basically write the skill for you. And so one thing to note here is that these are probably the most difficult ones in terms of testing, because you don't necessarily know when the outcome comes out, to validate whether you don't have the expertise to validate whether or not it's right. So this is where ideally, if you know someone that you can run the output by and get them to sense check it, that will be really helpful. And then the last one is if you have an existing AI tool or a skill to build that you've already built before that you want to build on, like a custom GPT. And so what I can show you here is basically how you can convert a GPT to a skill. And so what you would do here is you would pretty much just export the information that you've already got in the GPT or GEM. And so that really just involves copying the instructions. So opening up the tool itself and copying the instructions and the knowledge out of it, downloading that, taking it to Claude and uploading that information and saying, Claude, here's a custom GPT that I've had in the past. Can you now convert that to a skill? And then it will come back and give you that same install button. You click install. And then basically you do the same thing again as you test it, and you test it to see that it's working. And the thing I'll tell you about this is that you'll probably discover that the skill version actually outperforms the original GPT, or if it was a gem, because skills can draw on your other knowledge files and work alongside other skills. And also, as I said before, tap into the integrations that Claude Cowork offers. So because of that alone, it's going to be far more powerful. And I've done this myself because I had a lot of my original skills used to be custom GPTs. And I can tell you that they perform the same instructions, like just taking the instructions and knowledge and doing exactly what I said here and getting Claude to convert them. They're so much better without me having to do any further tweaking out of the box, which is pretty awesome. So yes, so that's kind of how you create them. And then what I can do now, if you like, is step you through the types of things that people could potentially be creating here.
Yes, I'd love to know this because I know you said you have some that run every day. So I'm like, I just want to know what they all are, but also
I don't blame you. That's the first thing I
yeah.
want to know when people talk about their AI dream teams as well. So, okay, so I've kind of broken this down into 5 parts of the different types of skills that you can have. And I'm always going to hark back to the foundations first. So the first skills that I would be creating are around making sure that you've got these things in place. So one of the skills that I created was Petra Positioning Pro, and I created her to help me nail my positioning. So if you're not sure what your positioning statement will be, then you can just go to Claude and ask Claude, because this isn't your area of expertise, let's say, help me come up with a positioning statement. And and you can get it to create a skill for you, or you can just do it in a chat if it's a one-off. But if you're going to do it over and over, I would say this is really useful. Then I create a page platform positioner. And what she does is she takes the positioning and makes sure it's consistent across everywhere that I show up. So she converted my positioning statement, my bio, the snapshot of my expertise. So everything from my core knowledge. And then I got her to basically go and research and find out what platform specific copy should look like. And then she tailored it for each place that I have a presence. And so whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, my website, podcast directories, all those places, so that I'm showing up consistently across all of those places, which is super important from an AI visibility point of view. And the next one, Trini Transcript Transformer, you kind of alluded to this one before. So she's how I transform, I compile my expertise efficiently. So she takes transcripts from my presentations, podcast interviews, and pairs it with the slides if I have them. She strips out the ums and ahs and any irrelevant bits, and she basically serves them back to me as the clean, value only versions of the presentations I wish I'd given. And then that becomes the source of knowledge of my expertise that can then get fed into blog posts and all those other things down the track. So that's a super important one that I think everyone should develop. Theo Thought Themes, he basically understands my editorial mission and he makes sure that I stick to it. So if I'm going off on a tangent, he'll jump in and kind of go, Loren, this isn't the direction you should be going. So they're kind of some foundation ones that I think are really useful for you to create. And then the next ones I think are good to do is from a research and planning point of view. And so I've created these specifically to help me with my content so that I'm providing content that is relevant to my audience. So Quinn Query Creator, I created him to research the topic questions that my audience are asking about. So he is helping me to be able to be putting out content that's going to be more likely for me to show up in AI search because I'm answering the questions that are being asked by my community. So that's why I created Quinn. And then Ian, Influence Investigator, he basically tracks the key conversations happening in my niche every day. So he's scheduled, this is one that's scheduled to run every day. So he runs every morning. He scans what my curated list of AI marketing influencers have posted in the last 24 hours. And then he deposits his findings into a Notion database, which means when it's time to create the content, I've got a ready-made bank of trending topics and talking points. And so I don't have to go and fight the algorithms to find this stuff. It's just delivered to me every day, which is super, super useful. And then Sienna, Social Strategist, she pulls together everything from Quinn and Ian plus my own contributions, and she builds a content plan for what I can be putting out across the different platforms. So that's the research side of things, which is super cool. And then the next bit is obviously creating the content. And I've mentioned some of these already. So I mentioned Boris Blog Builder, and he creates my blog posts. And then based on my thought leadership themes and based on what the other members of the team have said, this is the strategic direction we want to go in. And also obviously what I've created, I mentioned Victor Video Verbiage. He takes those blog posts and puts them into scripts that I can use as videos. And Emily, in Email Engineer, she's the one that plans my email strategy. She decides what to email, when, and she maps out sequences as well, but she doesn't actually write them. She used to write them, but then I developed Cooper Copycrafter and he writes the actual email copy because he's really trained from a copywriting perspective, specifically on engagement, conversion-based emails. So that's an example of where you might pull these things apart a little bit. And then obviously, once we've done this, we then got to go that next step, and that is to distribute this content, because that's what's going to really, get our authority content out there and really amplify the results that we're potentially going to make. And so one of the things that I've created is Wendy WordPress Writer, and I created her out of frustration because Boris would write this blog post. Then I would go and critique his work, and sometimes I only had to make a few edits. But then it would take me like forever to get it onto WordPress. And so Wendy now goes and takes it and puts it onto WordPress. And I use Divi, which uses blocks, and she even splits it up into the blocks and everything, which is the thing that's time consuming. And that just happens in the background. And I mentioned already Ria Repurposer and what she does. And then Enzo, Engagement Engineer, he basically creates engagement content that gets your audience interacting. So things like questions and polls and this or that type posts and conversation starters and any of those kind of hot take things. that's what he's trained to do. So if I'm wanting to create more of that type of content to put out there from an engagement point of view, that's his specialty. And then Shelley's scheduler, she handles the scheduling and distribution across the social channels. So she works through Claude's Cowork's integration with Lead Activator, which is my sales and marketing platform of choice. And she basically makes sure everything gets posted at the right time on the right platforms. So that kind of gets it all out there. But then once it's out there, the last step that we need to look at is basically how we're going to make sure that this all kind of runs smoothly. And this is where some of those integration tools come in together. And so, for example, I have Notion Notifier. And what Noah does is Noah takes all the content that's being created, because Claude creates it and puts it into like markdown files, which are pretty hard to read. Anyway, he takes that and puts it into the Notion database. And then basically it becomes easier for me to read and edit the versions of it. And then I can go and mark them as approved. And then once they're marked as approved, Connie, Content Commander, she gets notified that happens. And then she can go and do what the next steps are that are required off the back of it. So Connie, Content Commander, basically, she coordinates my entire content batching process for the week, and she walks me through each stage. And this is where make sure that I'm in the loop, and she tells me what I need to do. She gathers my decisions, she calls on the right specialists, and she really orchestrates the whole thing. So she's effectively my project manager for my content workflow. And then I had to throw this one in there because I think this is something everyone needs. If you're someone who's got all these chats all over the place and you're like, I know I've got some stuff I haven't finished, but I can't remember what it is. I created Chase Conversational Completionist for this. And he basically looks through for half finished chats, and he's scheduled to run every day. And then he comes to me every morning and says to me, hey, Loren, have you forgotten about these things? And then I update him, and then he'll go back and update them so he knows what I'm still progressing, what still needs to become. He resurfaces it for me. And so that I'm not the bottleneck in my own process and nothing falls through the cracks. So I absolutely love him. So does that give you a good idea of some tools, some skills you could potentially be creating?
Yes, absolutely. I have loved all of this. I'm so pumped. I firstly just want to say I love all your names. I think they're so, so good. I'm like, oh my God, these are the best. But yeah, I love how simple you make it all seem. Like I'm very big on making things seem simple so that people actually implement them. And everything you've
Yes.
said there, you're like, yeah, you just have like something that helps you with this and something that helps you with that. And I think that's really important these days when people do get so overwhelmed and overstimulated to be able to say, okay, maybe today I'll just work on one that does this. Maybe
Yep.
tomorrow I'll work on one that does this. Now, how can I make those two that talk to each other? And like, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to make Connie who can help me to coordinate all of the things. And then you're like, okay, I'm not really project managing myself great right now. I kind of would love to have a PA who could tell me where I'm forgetting things. All right, I'll make Chase and he can do that. And like, it's kind
Yep.
of like as you've been going through your business and you've been going through the processes, you're like, okay, what do I need a staff member to help me with today and building it? And so I just think this is amazing.
That's totally how it came together. And one other thing that you remind me of there is don't get stressed if you don't know how to do the thing. So, for example, when I talk about Wendy WordPress writer, I have no idea how she does what she does. Didn't know how to set it up, but I just said to Claude, I've got this problem. I want this to end up on my blog. How can I do this? And then Claude stepped me through it. In some cases, I had to do things. In other cases, it asked to take over my computer and set up integrations. And I was like, yeah, go for it. Go nuts. And it did it. And still to this day, I don't understand how it works, but it just works. Magic.
Which is so handy because when you're having tech issues, I do this myself. I'm like, when I'm having tech issues, I'm like, Claude, I don't know how to fix this. Can you fix my tech issue or at least diagnose it? And then I just get Claude to fix it because I don't know. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that you do the same thing and you're just like, it'll
Yeah.
build it. It'll be fine. So I love this. This is amazing. So what else? Is there anything else we need to know about doing this? Because like I'm loving this and I'm sure everyone's sitting there going, I need to write notes about who I'm going to build today.
Well, I know I've probably gone way over time here. So there is a resource that people could get underneath here, which is going to step you through the process of building skills as well. I think you're going to save that alongside the video somewhere. But the thing I want to say that I want to really bring people back to here is that AI isn't the thing that makes you the expert. You are. AI is just the partner that helps you prove it. So don't look, too many people expect AI to, help them become the expert without putting their expertise in there first. And I want you to really make sure, and that's why I keep harping back to these core knowledge files, is to do that bit first, put you in there, put your expertise in there, and then let AI amplify this. Because, at the end of the day, that's how you're going to achieve success. If you just try and build all of this without putting you into it first, you're going to just be creating more noise. Yes, it might be okay, but it's not going to be the thing that gets you noticed. It's not going to be the thing that's going to make you stand out. It's not going to be the thing that's going to make you the go-to expert in your niche. So do that, and I think you will be totally fine. And if you need any further help along the way, then feel free to connect with me. You can search for Loren Bartley or Impactivate. Both of those are quite unique names that you can find. You'll also find me as AI Mega Success. And there's a link there that you can scan or go directly to the URL there that can find some of the other ways that you can make contact with me or the other things I've got to offer, which would be great.
Oh, I love this. Thank you so much, Lauren.